I think if you can understand astrology and even just understand my astrological signs, you can understand me pretty well. So I'm a Virgo sun, Libra moon, and an Aquarius rising. And if you don't understand what any of that means, Virgo means I was born in a certain time of the month. That's your sun sign. Usually the later half of August there, and then through the middle of September. Then your moon sign is where in the sky the moon was when you were born and what constellation it was in. So that's Libra. And then your rising sign is the sign that was coming up over the horizon at the time you were born, which is Aquarius. And if you don't know anything about those signs, the Virgo part of me is very analytical, very reserved, very controlling, very loyal, very precise. I like this makes me really good at aesthetics because I like, specific measurements. I like the way things look. I like things being organized. Now, these are kind of, as I'm talking through them, it's a spectrum. Some people can be very organized. Some Virgos can be very organized and very disorganized. It just depends. Not every person is the same. Their trauma, their level of healedness, I guess, is can affect that. But for me, I like to be organized. I like to be precise. I like facts. If you tell me something, I will take it as what it is. But I want you to be correct if you tell me something. But yeah, that's the Virgo side of me. Very analytical, very, very critical. Sometimes to a fault, but that's all. There's a light side and a dark side to everything, and you kind of have to understand them all to be able to ask yourself, okay, where am I on that spectrum, and what do I need to work on? So keep that in mind when you're looking up your own stuff. But yeah, then we get to the Libra moon. So the moon sign represents your body and your emotions, among other things. And so with Libras are very balanced. That's kind of the main takeaway for me. So a way that I balance my body is by doing yoga. The way that I balance my emotions is by being really good at being able to understand a lot of different perspectives. I can understand where people are coming from without siding with them. And sometimes that can be seen as, not being able to make a decision. I can be kind of, teetering that balance there because I'm trying to keep the harmony. I don't want any confrontation. But there's a time and place for everything. So, yeah. So my emotions are typically balanced, meaning when I'm starting to feel something, and I wasn't always this way. I will say the more work that I do on myself, the more balance and harmony I find. But when it comes to balancing my emotions, if I'm upset with something, I try to understand it from a different perspective so that I can not necessarily avoid the anger, because it's a very important part of the healing. It's a very good indicator of what you need to, where that pain point can really help you understand yourself a lot better. But as you're wondering, how do I, take control of my body and my emotions, not being afraid of them is going to be very important. And because I'm always trying to look for that balance of it, even when I do find myself being angry at something, being able to see the opposite perspective, or a perspective that doesn't necessarily live in that anger, helps me find that balance so that I don't have to sit in that anger for so long needlessly. Sometimes it's necessary, like I said. Sometimes that anger is really showing you something important, especially if it's something that you're feeling repetitively. But I find that balance through those emotions, and it just helps me be more patient, be more present, be more level with what it is I'm trying to explain when I'm trying to explain my feelings to myself or to someone. So it comes in handy. And then Aquarius rising, and that's more of your external perspective. And Aquarius just means I'm kind of weird sometimes, and that's okay too. I tend to, and again, I wasn't always like this, but there are instances in my past where I kind of march to the beat of my own drum and do things in a different way. I like to create. I like to do things that are unconventional, or that can be seen as unconventional. Sometimes that shows up in the work that I create. Sometimes that shows up in the way that I look. It just depends. But if you can understand those three things, like, you'll basically understand, oh, this person is organized and interested in facts and will do the research. This person will this person will also be able to mediate, be able to find the balance, be able to find the understanding, and this person likes to do it in a weird way. And it's cool to understand yourself in a deeper level. Even if you don't believe in astrology, kind of looking at it and just kind of seeing what resonates and trying to understand yourself a little bit more is just like fun. It is important to understand yourself, understand why you do the things that you do, and then choosing to do things a little bit more deliberately, a little bit more mindfully. But astrology can be one of those, So it's helpful. And I was one of those people that read their astrology or horoscope, but never really understood a lot of it, and I still don't. I'm not an expert in any capacity at all, but I do like to read through the things that are representative of my astrological signs and my birth chart. Your birth chart is basically a snapshot of what the solar system looked like at the time of your birth. So you'll be able to see where certain planets were, and where they were can affect certain aspects of your life and can influence certain aspects of your life. And again, if you listen back to the other video about energy, if everything is energy, then of course it would make sense that planets, especially a planet as big as Jupiter, would probably influence a little pop of energy that came out at the time and date I was born, right? So if everything is energy, of course astrology makes sense. Of course it's valid, because everything is influencing everything all the time, on a particle level. It's all energy. It's all being influenced. It's kind of like if you put a magnet next to another one. That movement is that energy being reflected and bounced off one another. If that happens in a small refrigerator magnet, of course it's going to have a similar effect in things like planets and the moon. Now, if you don't believe anything I've said up till now, another way to think about this is the tides. The moon, the tides are a result of the gravitational pull of the moon. That the moon being there is the reason the tides are being pulled in that direction. And that's why we have low and high tides. So if the moon can affect the tides, of course it would. Of course, other planets and other constellations could impart meaning in our lives. Now, just like everything else, you decide what it is you want to take from what you're learning. If it doesn't resonate with you, don't use it. It's not a big deal. But what I've learned with astrology, like I said, I wasn't always into it, and now I am. Something that got me really more interested in it was I wasn't into astrology, went through this kind of awakening where I was trying to understand myself and the world around me and the universe a little bit more. Started making changes in my life. Things like doing yoga, intermittent fasting, and then started learning more about astrology. And as I was looking at the details of my birth chart and the influences and impact of my astrological signs and the timing of my birth and all of that, something that I noticed was that in between that time that I wasn't into astrology, I started living my life in the way that I found out astrology suggests I live or tells me that I would live. Like, for example, I started doing yoga and intermittent fasting, and then I literally read in my birth chart details that someone with my astrological signs, and there's a lot to go into it, so it's not just a Virgo, not just my big three, there's a lot more, but someone with my pattern would probably be interested in intermittent fasting and yoga. That's just one example. There are a ton of them. When I think about, social justice and the way that I want to create and the way that I feel about justice in the world and living in peace and living in love and trying to create a message that heals and being a healer and wanting to figure out how to heal people, because I know if they can learn to love themselves, they can learn to love everybody else, and vice versa. And that is literally how we make change in the world. At least that's how I see it. One of the ways. In learning that through astrology, it again just became kind of a affirmation. It became something that made me feel like what I was doing was in line with who I am and who I really feel that I am, which is a learning process. It's not something that I just woke up and was like, oh, I'm gonna do X, Y, or Z or be X, Y, or Z today. No, I'm constantly learning who I am and making that conscious decision to be who I am. Even if I can't do it 100%. Even if I do become unbalanced or disorganized or isolated, which some Virgos like isolation, so I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but astrology kind of was that affirmation that told me that I was not necessarily an affirmation, but it was just more of a confirmation that there could be a relation here, and maybe that was something that just further solidified my belief in it. But yeah, I like it. It's pretty cool. So if you don't know your astrological signs, I definitely would recommend. It's just it's like Myers-Briggs. It's like the Enneagram, like any test that you take, those personality tests. If you'll take one that tells you what Harry Potter character you are, try this. It's not to compare the two and not to diminish one or the other, but it is this idea of what's another way you can try to understand yourself, and astrology is one of those ways. And if I can suggest, there's an app. It's called Chani, Chani. That's the name of the woman who created it. I have found that app is the most accurate and the most well written for my vibe. It may not be yours. It depends on how you feel about the world and where your stance, but I like the way she writes her stuff. I like the way it's empowering. It's also direct. It's also like no bullshit. So Chani is the app. Look out for a trial or something, because when you get on the app, there are a couple things that are free, and you can see like your big three. So when you put in your birth date, your location, and your birth time, that's how you get a good idea of your birth chart. It'll show you what your birth chart looks like. You'll be able to see your placements and see how those things affect one another. But on the free version, you can see the first three. But if you do get like a month code from her, or if you even want to buy it and use it, I recommend really reading through that, because it was the most comprehensive and the most accurate. And again, I wasn't trying to it seemed like I was already doing the things that the descriptions were telling me. So again, it was more of confirmation. It wasn't like I was reading something and trying to become that. It was more like through the time where I was spending time on myself becoming, it just so happened that it lined up with a lot of what was in the description. So that's the app that I would recommend. But yeah, astrology is cool, so give it a shot. And like I said, the Chani app is pretty cool.